Welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Buzz Podcast. We're so happy that you're joining us as we continue to talk about different Catholic topics. Last week we talked about prayer and discernment. Today we're moving on to the season of Lent, which begins tomorrow with Ash Wednesday. And my name is Father Daniele, and I'm joined always by Josh Sullivan over here.
Hello.
And the two of us were giving up shaving our beards for Lent. This is Matt Van Milligan.
Hello.
Matt, welcome to you. It begins tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes, it begins tomorrow. That's it. No more razors on your face.
Yeah.
That's
Wednesday.
what we're doing for Lent. I'm just kidding. That's not what we're doing for Lent. Imagine that's what we were doing. Like, that's growing in the spiritual life, eh? That's real mature of us.
That would be a penance for my wife.
So what's my excuse?
It'll
be a penance for all the viewers.
The entire parish.
Exactly. The entire parish who has to look at me. So we're already here in Lent 2021. It's come fast. And we begin tomorrow. And, I always like this time of year because it's a really shifting of gears.
Yeah.
Really, it really, for me anyways, personally, it, makes me think, hey, it's time. Because, after a new year, you make resolutions the new year, then you start to grow slack, especially this year. We've been closed and open and closed.
You feel like you deserve a treat, kind of, but because we're closed or whatever the case may be.
We've cut ourselves some slack.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then Lent is always like, hey, get your butt back on track.
Get back in here. Take on stuff. Give up stuff. Get some self-discipline in place.
Yeah, and I really, honestly, I love the simplicity of Lent. At church when all the colors change to purple, obviously, but it's very simple. There's no cloths around, no flowers, no decorations. You put the font away. It's just this period of it's a desert experience.
Because it's Shrove Tuesday. And did you know the reason why it's Pancake Tuesday?
Yes, of course, I do, yeah.
Because they had eggs and milk and all that stuff left over. Yeah, and in the olden days, a couple hundred years ago, but a while ago, they never used to have any dairy products or that kind of stuff during Lent, right? Yeah. And so they would fast from so they would have, I guess, would it just be meats and vegetables and bread, I guess, or however it was, and then they wouldn't have the good stuff, which would be dairy and whatever.
So they were trying to get rid of it.
They try to get rid of it, so they have a big and pancakes were the easiest way to put milk and eggs and all in one big thing and have Shrove Tuesday. And then they wouldn't have it for 40 days, and then at Easter is the egg and the new life and everything else, but you could have eggs again.
That's so funny. I know the Shrove Tuesday tradition, but I never thought that on Easter Sunday were people gorging on pancakes again? Or...
Yeah, well, I was gonna say we eat eggs. The Easter Bunny brings us eggs.
Exactly. By the way, as a side note, I saw Josh's chickens. And they are large and ready to make eggs.
Yeah, we are waiting for that first egg to come through. I'm going so excited.
The last time I saw these chickens, they were just little chicks like this. And now, I opened the door to their little chicken coop, and they're I was frightened. Yeah. They were larger than, well, not larger than me. That's impossible. But they were large. Yeah. Anyways, so it is a shifting of gears for the Lenten season, and I love it because Lent is always a time that I'm just hey, it's Lent. It's like that spiritual part of your life where you're serious about it. You're
time to buckle down.
Yes.
It's the January of your spiritual life.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's why it's exciting. I know it's not it's a period. It's really a time of penance and self-reflection and things, but it's exciting because at the end of every Lent, I always feel like I have grown and matured in my spiritual life. So,
and taking things on for the proper reasons or how you do it. It's all kind of or giving things up.
So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about Lent. We begin tomorrow officially when you get ashed. When you get marked with ash, your Lenten journey begins, and it goes. Now, people say, when does Lent end? It's a 40-day period. This is what I tell people because people say, does it end Good Friday? Does it end whatever? And really what they're asking is, when can I start eating chocolate again if I gave it up or whatever? And I always tell people, you can eat chocolate if that's what you gave up after you attend the Easter Mass.
Vigil.
So whether that's the Easter Vigil Mass, the first Mass of Easter, or Easter Sunday, as soon as you leave the church, you can eat chocolate again. Because, it's not just Easter Sundays here, you have to participate in that Easter Sunday.
That's right.
You have to participate in the
Yeah.
Easter Sunday. So it's 40 days long, and that is to obviously mirror Jesus in the desert, right?
40 days.
Jesus tempted in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. And people always say Lent is not actually 40 days.
That's a big question. Okay, so why is that? So, like, because if you count from Ash Wednesday all the way through to Good Friday, or this is where the question comes up, right? Is
Yes.
it Good Friday or is it the Holy? I've heard that. Okay, we don't include Holy Week. Holy Week you still fast, but you don't include Holy Week.
Yeah.
And so one of the explanations I've heard, so you can tell me which one you think or which one is true, but is that Sundays are time off. But then I've heard the counter argument to that, which is people saying, well, Jesus didn't go to the desert for 6 days and then one off, and then 6 days and then one off, and then 6 one.
So you're right to say that if, like, from the calendar,
Yeah.
if you were counting the days,
Yeah.
Lent is 46 days, I believe, or
Yeah.
47, 46, I think, because it's 40 days of Lent plus the 6 Sundays of Lent.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because Sunday is the day of the resurrection. Every Sunday is a solemnity. It's the day of the resurrection. And so it's not counted as a period of penance.
Yes.
Right? Which Lent is, a period of penance. That's why the colors are purple. That's why we have a more focus on self-reflection and our sin and reconciliation with God. Right? So because Sunday is the day of the resurrection, that takes precedence over anything. Right? And people do say, I've heard this a lot recently, Sunday is a break from your Lenten fast. You know? Which there is some truth to that, I will say. Because on Sundays, because it is the day of the resurrection, you are not to actively fast, right? Because it is a day of joy and the resurrection of Jesus. But if it's not a trial for you, to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's good to just gorge on Sundays of things you've given up, or
I think you have to look if that's the case, and I've done it.
Yeah,
I've done that. But if that's the case, and you are planning out your Sundays days before so that you can gorge on whatever you're fasting from, then you have to look. There's a deeper issue here.
yeah, but
You know what I mean?
it's common practice today. You look at people who are trying to get fit.
Yeah, yeah,
What do they look forward to?
Yeah.
Cheat day.
exactly. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's just part of the life now. It's like, well, if I work this hard, when is my break? When is my cheat? Like, that's kind of part of the way the world works now. The social structure, I guess. So yeah, people are looking for an out. If I had to give up something for 40 days.
Well, and I would give people the suggestion that part of the whole purpose. So, like, we know the tradition that you give something up, and the idea of maybe taking something on comes forward. But why do we do it? Because if we understand why we do it, then maybe Sunday doesn't become a cheat day so much as it becomes a day that you could let yourself, like, you don't have to feel bad about celebrating this, the Mass and the resurrection, but it's not a day that you're planning out ahead of time to, you know what I mean? So if it takes 30 days to break a habit or form a new habit, we got 40 days, we're just over that. Lent's a perfect time that when you're struggling with something, you gave a homily 2 weeks ago, I think, that talked about if you're struggling or whatever, and giving it to God, but also, like, Lent is that time, right, where we can kind of take that and work through some issues.
I mean, it's very scriptural. You know, people who, when the bridegroom is present, you shouldn't fast.
Yeah.
Right? That's where the Sunday thing is. You know, but the thing is, you should not actively try and is that the right word?
Yeah, or try and manipulate, the rules to find loopholes to find
Loopholes.
That's
Loopholes. Don't go for the loopholes.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with it. That a lot of times people just kind of superimpose their approach to New Year's, to resolutions, to like, I'm not going to eat chocolate, or I'm going to fix myself, because and they take on all these activity, or they try and just shove down kind of the bad things that they might be disposed to, and like they're definitely, I don't want to downplay that at all, because there's definitely prescriptions for fasting and abstinence during Lent, and the practice of giving things up is good. But I think what you were talking about, more holistic perspective on what is this actually aimed at achieving? That like eliminating vice isn't the same thing as cultivating virtue. So if you're
that's a really good point.
Yeah. So if your focus is on just like, I'm not going to eat chocolate, that doesn't make you a healthy person. That doesn't make you that doesn't necessarily orient you towards practices that will make you healthy. So that's the kind of New Year's resolution version. But in terms of our spiritual lives, and it's like, okay, if we just kind of give up this or give up screen time or whatever, like screen time doesn't actually make you more prayerful. So the intention of taking things on and eliminating the things that distract you from that good thing that's, fostering good spiritual habits. I think that's a better approach, or that's a better kind of mind frame to enter Lent in.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to really understand the purpose of why we give stuff up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why the sacrifice is made to begin with. We're trying to clean up our act and sort of, so to speak, of making us better Christians, better disciples of Jesus, right? So giving up chocolate, while it's difficult for us, is chocolate such an obsession in our life that it's preventing us from being a disciple of Jesus? Most of the time, the answer is no. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, and there is some value in just kind of
self-discipline.
Self-control and kind of fostering that habit, but it's limited value if it's not oriented towards something better.
Yeah, that's true. And we give things up to make room
for the good.
For the good.
I think that was one of the things when you're saying that. Like, giving up chocolate isn't going to make you a better Christian. You know what I mean? In of itself. Yeah. But if you struggle, if you're a chocoholic, and
sure, different issue then.
Yeah. But if you're struggling and giving up chocolate, well, giving up chocolate could lead you to a little more self-discipline. And so as we practice self-discipline in abstaining and fasting from things that we really want, we truly want, but we don't need. Yeah. It allows us then, we can convert that self-discipline into areas of our life where we might struggle that could lead us to being worse Christians or better Christians. Like, for instance, if you struggle with chocolate, then getting that strength of self-discipline, from there you can move on to self-discipline in other areas. Maybe you struggle with lust, and so there's an area there where there's self-discipline can really help. Yeah. Or maybe for me, like, I love my food. You know what I mean? So, like, food in general is fasting from not all food because you need it, but fasting from the things I love, and fasting by manipulating and giving myself self-discipline in those areas. Yeah. I'm able then to control what self-discipline in other areas of my life.
Yeah, and it's also about, like, a number of weeks ago we talked about where are we spending our time. Remember, I think it was the episode we were talking
calendar
about
scriptures.
Yeah. Where are we spending our time? And I think if we, and our money, when we compare what we spend our time on with how much time we devote to the Lord, it would be embarrassing, I think, is the point we tried to make that day. Yeah. So let's look at our daily life. Am I spending an hour playing video games? Am I spending 3 hours watching TV? Mm-hmm. Am I on Facebook or playing games on my iPad or whatever people do in their time? And can I remove? We're not, it could be a little bit of it. Mm-hmm. It could say, I'm going to limit myself to 1 hour of TV or whatever it might be. But with that extra time, to do something good with it, to do something that's going to be beneficial to our spiritual life. So it's not just about challenging us, which is great because it does form us in a virtue of self-discipline, but it's also replacing something that we've just got in the habit of mindless activities sort of thing with purposefully trying to deepen our relationship with God. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I think having the right mind the balance.
Frame. Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. So, with the example of TV or Netflix, people spend all night watching Netflix or a series or, binging on something. Limit that and then give an hour of that time to something that would benefit your spiritual life. Yeah. Reading of the scriptures.
By the time you get to Easter, and you were kind of saying this at the beginning, that like, whether or not you've had a good Lent, or like you should be different from the person you were on Ash Wednesday. And if you're not, you may have been in that place where you're just kind of like manipulating the rules to, like, give something up, or like, follow the guidelines, but not necessarily. Even if you're giving things up, taking things on, doing the things that you should do, all of that is good, but should ultimately be oriented towards. We talked about it in our Advent episode. It's a season of preparation. It's a season of preparing ourselves for the coming of Christ. So in Advent, it's preparing ourselves for the incarnation. For Lent, it's preparing ourselves for the passion, death, and resurrection of Christ. That it's you talked about it being 40 days, that it's like 40 days biblically is typically a symbol for renewal, for something that is being a new creation or like created anew. So, Noah and the ark, 40 days, 40 nights. The Israelites were in the wilderness for 40 years and became, the people of God through that. And that you have the temptation of Christ. That 40 is a pretty significant number. And our friend Daryl gave a talk to our RCIA candidates last year about 40 being 40 weeks gestation is actually the period for like a new human life. And it's like that this is a like a new life should be the result of, and like resurrection
from 40.
that happens on Easter Sunday. That this is if we're the exact same people that we were going into Ash Wednesday, coming out the other end of the resurrection, then we're kind of missing the point, or we're kind of focused on like the
wrong thing.
Yeah.
I think too, if you're a loophole lenter,
Yeah.
I'm coining that term.
Yeah.
How long have you been thinking of that?
I was just thinking about what you wanted. If you're a loophole lenter, why?
Yeah.
Who cares? Like, why are you giving it up then? Why? Like, what is the purpose? Is it to make so you can tell your family that you are also observing Lent? Like you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what's the purpose behind? I mean, I don't want to say it's like the Pharisees and like, look at me, I'm fasting. That whole thing that they talk about from the Bible. But it's more like, why? Why are you giving it up? So instead of just doing it because of tradition, no, then make something of it. Why not try to be what you said, like be a new person, be a new life at the end of our 40 days of Lent. So what are we giving up? What is it that, and what are we taking on to make sure that we're at that point?
Yeah, and remember, like tomorrow when we begin Ash Wednesday, we begin our journey of Lent. The words that are used when you put ash on the forehead or sprinkled on the head or whatever it might be, repent and believe in the gospel. So we're asked to remove things from our life that are not good for us and strengthen our belief in God. The other traditional words are, remember that you are dust, and unto dust you shall return, meaning that we're not anything special in this world. Like, everything special about us belongs to God, who created us. And that's how we begin our journey of Lent. Remember here, less of you, more of me, more of God. And that's what I think is so special about Lent. And that's what you guys were saying. What is the point of it all? The point is more of God, less of me.
We've experienced it all throughout this entire year of COVID.
Yeah.
Right? Which I think was it you that was saying? Someone said to me just recently, talking about how we, like in the lockdown scenarios that we had and kind of going in and going out and maybe next week, maybe this week, whatever the case may be, we're not missing our material things. We can still shop online. We can still get what you need. You can get your groceries. You can get. I got a couch during this year of COVID. I bought a house during this year of COVID, and I bought a car this year of COVID. Like it's not. You can get
From
your
all the
material
money
things.
on the Catholic bus.
All the money on the Catholic bus. All the money I get. Yeah. I get.
I don't get those checks.
But yeah. So but like material wise, COVID hasn't restricted us at all.
Right.
Hardly at all. I mean, there's a couple extra steps if you really want something, but COVID hasn't. But what we are missing during lockdown is our family, is our life, people.
Things that matter.
Things that matter. Our relationships with each other, but also, I mean, this is good to miss, but making sure you've lost this part. Have you strengthened this part?
Yeah, the author of those things.
Exactly.
Right? The author. There's a prayer always in the collect or the opening prayer at Mass, the author of all that is good, the author of all that we have. And that's God. But, and those are the things that we miss. Okay, so moving on here, we've talked about the importance of Lent. There's 3 things that we really take part of in Lent, and that is prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Those are like the themes of Lent, right? Fasting, prayer, and almsgiving. So let's break them down. So prayer, I think we've touched on. We're trying to
make yourself better,
make ourselves better, rebuild. Even we talked about that last week with discernment and prayer. We have to open up those communication lines again with God. We need to spend time with Him,
daily basis.
Give Him time, invite Him into our lives. I think we know that, but it's really important for people to make a prayer program if they don't have one already for Lent. And
Make
try
it a
and stick
routine.
with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, for example, I added a new thing to my own prayer time. Is that Bible in a Year podcast
Yeah, it's been
with
good, eh?
Father Mike Schmitz. It's
Yeah.
been excellent.
Can I just point out while people are listening?
Yeah.
You don't have to, if you haven't started that already, you
can start now. Yeah.
He doesn't mention dates. He says day 1, day
1.
2, day 3. So you can
Exactly.
start it. And he says that, I mean, just recently in the podcast, he said,
Yeah.
you realize I don't say dates is because you can start it at any time. Start at day 1 and move through. So
it's been excellent, and that I've added that. So as soon as I wake up in the morning, it's the first thing I do. So it's on. I'm listening to it, before I start my own prayer period of time. But that was like, okay, that is the time I have to listen to it, or else the day gets gone and whatever. So make a plan, stick to it, right? That's really important for prayer. Another thing too for prayer that I would say is really important during Lent is the Stations of the Cross. This is what we're reflecting on, when we get to Holy Week and we're following Jesus on the way to the cross, to really meditate on each step he took, each station of the cross. Really powerful. One of my favorite ones is by St. Alphonsus Liguori, his Stations of the Cross. Very beautiful.
can I ask, where does the stations come from? So this is one of those areas, I don't know if you guys can answer. We didn't, but if you can answer or not, because that's one of the areas that Protestant go, okay, well, how do you know about Veronica? How do you know about this? How do you know about like those areas of the Stations of the Cross? Now it's a reflection. It's a discipline, right? But it's something that we do.
It's a devotion.
It's a devotion,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and usually it's prayed Fridays during Lent, but it can be prayed at any time, daily during. And I know people who still pray the Stations of the Cross
Daily.
outside of Lent.
Yeah.
Because it's such a powerful prayer to really reflect on Jesus every step of the way. I know I always have the image in my mind when I get to the station where Veronica wipes the face of Jesus from the movie The Passion. Is that the movie The Passion? Yeah. And
Passion of the Christ.
Jesus is kind of laying on the floor, and Veronica comes and just sort of tenderly wipes his face. I mean, that's kind of etched in my mind as something. But like, those are real moments that Jesus walked to on the way to the cross, and to pray with each one of them. Do I wash the face of Jesus? Am I adding to the load of the cross? Are my sins adding to the number of times Jesus falls? Like, it's a really self-reflective prayer that leads us deeper.
Not only that he fell, but that he got back up, knowing what's going to happen
for us. Yeah. The very same people who caused him to fall to begin with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful prayer. So that would be something that I would say is a really good reflection for the season of Lent. Okay, that's prayer. Fasting. Who wants to take on fasting?
Yeah. I think we've already talked about it a little bit. Like there are definite prescriptions for fasting, and this is when you should fast. You should definitely fast on Fridays. You should fast from certain things. I don't know if we want to talk about the difference between kind of fasting and abstinence.
I think that's important because there's different guidelines for fasting, different guidelines for abstinence. I was just listening to a podcast that talked about a little bit about that stuff. But like, I guess abstinence is the age of majority, or was it what would age?
Abstinence is 14 years of age and older.
And older. So there's no end date.
And abstinence means refraining from meat, flesh foods. And the reason for that is because Jesus gave up his flesh on Friday. That's why traditionally the church asks us to refrain from eating meat or fleshy foods on Fridays throughout the whole year.
Yeah.
And it's just a small sacrifice of ours to recall that this is, just like every Sunday, we recall the resurrection. Yeah. This is the Sunday, Jesus rose from the dead on this day. Every Sunday is the day of the resurrection. So every Friday, we're supposed to recall, this is the day the Lord gave his life for me. And that small sacrifice of giving up fleshy foods throughout the entire year. Lent predominantly is a good time to keep that practice. I know in Canada, the bishops have given permission throughout the rest of the year to replace not eating meat with another charitable act. They released that.
You can take on a prayer, or you can take a
charitable act, or attend a mass, or things like that.
You're doing something. But the whole idea behind it is the church has asked us to do something on Friday.
Yeah, and I would say during Lent, to maintain that, like to not eat meat, not try and replace it with something.
Well, it's the loopholes.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are you doing the loopholes again? I mean, no one, like, you go ahead and eat meat. Not that the church is saying that. I'm saying go ahead and eat meat. it's not going to reflect on anybody but yourself.
Yeah.
And so you're the one, like, why are you doing that? Why are you trying to find loopholes? Just no one's, I tell my students, they're like, how come we have to come to school when we were allowed to go into class? How come we have to go to school? I'm like, you are paying individuals, paying the college and the university for this class. You don't have to be here. Like, but you come because you gain something from it, right? So it's the same thing. You don't have to fast. The church tells you should be fasting and stuff. So go, like, yes, you need to fast, but don't try to do the loopholes. Get the fullness of what's going on.
And also it's like, what degree you're making a sacrifice to.
Yes.
We've talked about the difference between kind of Eastern and Western Catholicism. A lot of Eastern churches still have, you go without meat entirely
For the entire thing of Lent.
For Lent. That you're basically vegan for the entire thing.
I did that one Lent.
And it's like that for me would be a big sacrifice. I really enjoy food. I really enjoy making food. I really enjoy, but there are even some that, like some of my friends within that tradition, who are fantastic cooks, who have, managed to
that's their everyday life.
But they know that they're going to take this on, and they're able to make these kind of like decadent vegetarian dishes that whatever. That's still a sacrifice, but they're still kind of recognizing the goodness of food, the goodness of because so there and you wouldn't say that them kind of investing in that is just kind of taking away the sacrifice of them. No. That it's something that they're being obedient to, that they're submitting themselves to. They're making the most of it, not necessarily looking for loopholes. Yeah. That it's to what degree you're kind of making a sacrifice, and kind of the good that's kind of resulting from it.
Yeah. So the abstinence, you mentioned the 14 years of age and older, right? Yeah. So fasting, just to be clear, is 18 to 59. It says until someone has started their 60th year, or those who can. Yeah, I would say, or those who can.
There are people like diabetics who won't be able to necessarily fast.
If they're even between those ages, like if someone is in their 60s and says, I can fast today, that's one full meal, right? Then please do it. But at any age, if you're ill or pregnant, I believe, or whatever it might be, you don't have to.
No,
fast,
and so just so we get it down to the point, we have abstinence, which was abstaining from meat, and then fasting is
a limit of one full meal,
one actual meal.
Day. Yeah, and that is Ash Wednesday and Good Friday.
Yes.
Okay, so those are days of fasting, whereas days of abstinence, which is refraining from meat, are Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, and every Friday.
Yeah.
In Lent.
I
had to stop it. And every Friday, the church canon, I believe it's canon 1250.
Yeah, for every Friday.
For those people who like canon law, says every Friday of the year because of what we talked about, Jesus' sacrifice. The Canadian bishops have said that for every other Friday in Lent, you can replace it with an act of charity. But there are lots of people who still refuse to eat meat. I mean, look at all the restaurants, right? Like McDonald's has their Fish Fridays, Subway has their tuna sub, or like this is built around the Christian tradition of eating fish on Fridays. We're running out of time, but just quickly, if people have no ideas for Lent, it starts tomorrow. What are some things we can take on and some things you can give up? Would that be fair to end with today? Yeah. If people are looking for suggestions, let's start with things you can take on.
Take on. Oh, sorry. So one of the things that I found really fruitful, especially since I'm a relatively new Catholic, what I've been doing for the past 3 years maybe, is reading the compendium of the Catechism through the course of Lent. So it's something small. I read a couple articles as part of my morning prayer, and I'm able to get through the whole compendium. But it's a really, really great summary of a near complete summary of Christian doctrine. So it's a really, really great way of feeding myself, or and maybe I'll just jump onto like giving stuff up, because a lot of times like I enjoy kind of study, I enjoy reading, but like the thing that takes me away from that is probably screen time. So I'm looking up an article on my phone or checking the news or something that it's like, but it's like I can put my phone down, I can put it under a book, but it's just like it's not enough to just like to not look at my phone is not a great achievement.
Right.
But if I can displace, the time I would otherwise be spending on my phone, actually learning what the church teaches, actually kind of submitting myself to, the truth of the church, that's a productive or like a kind of a proactive use of my time.
And just to clarify, the compendium of the Catechism is sort of a shortened, abbreviated version of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which I have here in front of us.
Yeah.
And it's written sort of in like a form that you can read it.
It's structured the same way, but it is abridged, and it's just
you can find it online. You can get the book or find
and if you don't have a copy, Father will send you one.
A little different.
Sure.
Yeah.
I actually have a few copies. Yeah. That I can give. Okay, things you can take on, things you can give up.
Okay, so again, screen time for me, big one. So I'm gonna encourage that, but also maybe the amount of time of needless that we're just filling our day with, whatever that might be. It's not necessarily screen time. Maybe it is reading. Maybe it is, or maybe it's just idless chatter or whatever the case might be. So putting that aside, one of the things I'm going to be trying to do this is a half hour to an hour. I'm deciding tomorrow. Half hour to an hour of sitting with my kids. No plan, no nothing. I'm just going to be sitting in the living room with my kids. I'm not forcing them to be there, obviously, but if I sit in the living room, they're going to all come around and start chatting my head off. But the idea is, so I'm giving up some of my screen time, and I'm going to be coming and forcing about an hour of myself just to sit down for family time. And there's nothing on the agenda. My phone is going to be locked away in the other room, and just so that I can be fully invested in my children at that time, because I'm a very busy person, and I don't. When I come home, a lot of times they're just after supper. So like I get up, if I'm doing my part time, we sometimes chat around that time where they give up their TV time so they can come chat with me, which is great. But then when I come home, I'm like, okay, leave me alone. I've had a big day. I just want to be left. But I'm going to offer up that sacrifice during Lent so I can just sit there and be with my children. Okay. You know what I mean? And I'm expecting that they want to. If I just sit there in the living room and no one comes around a little while, then maybe we'll have to readjust.
Well, now you know how they feel about you.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what they gave up for Lent.
Exactly. Being around Dad.
They're giving up being around Dad. You're just like, more time with them. They're like, oh, less time. Yes, so things you can take on. I know we didn't really touch on almsgiving, but things I suggest to people are, if you're looking for something to give up and take on, a good thing is to give up people every day stop at Tim Hortons, get a coffee, or stop at something. Give that up. Take the money you would normally spend there, $2 a day or $4 a day, whatever you're buying. If you're buying a donut and a coffee, put it aside, donate it to a charity. So that's something you could take on. And it's a sacrifice of yours, giving up your daily coffee or whatever, right? Things you can give up. I mean, we talked about a bunch of things. TV, screen time, you said. Listening to music, always sort of
having something going busy in the background.
And what I always suggest to people is really try hard this Lent, because there's grace in the period of Lent. Try hard, give up a sin you're struggling with. Really focus on that sin that you're struggling with. And this is the period of time where there's grace around to conquer that sin. Stuff like pornography or pride or being lazy, swearing, using the Lord's name in vain. How it just slips out of people's mouth. Be like harsh judgments on people, being selfish, things that you struggle with.
It talks about that in the Bible. Some sins and some addictions and stuff can only be cured with prayer and fasting.
Exactly.
And so using the fasting that you're giving up, I mean, obviously it's sin, but like taking on something, using your Lenten graces that come with that and put it towards one of these.
It's so true. This was a great discussion on Lent, and happy Lent to both of you.
Oh, thank you.
Happy Lent to all of our people watching, and let's pray for each other this season of Lent, because really, when Easter comes, we can really rejoice in the joy of the resurrected Lord, and come out of it like stronger Christians, better disciples of Jesus. So thanks for this discussion. Next week, we have a really fun episode.
I'm excited about it.
Because next week is our high school episode. We're going back to high school next week. Hey? When I had hair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Me too.
So,
hair here and none here.
Exactly. Now it's the opposite.
When I would wear a short tee over a long tee.
Things don't change.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The 90s are still here. Yeah.
So next week is our high school episode. Students of high school have been sending us questions for that episode all over Northern Ontario. They've been sending us questions. So if you're a student in high school or a teacher in a classroom watching us, you can send us your questions this week. And we will answer them next week on next week's episode of our high school edition of the Catholic Buzz podcast. I'm excited for that
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
episode. And so that's it. Tomorrow's Ash Wednesday. Get your ash. Get your ash in church. I don't know. That should be the tagline or something. Yeah. Happy Ash Wednesday. Happy Lent for Josh Sullivan and Matt Van Milligan. I'm Father Daniele. We'll see you next time on the Catholic Buzz.